everybody, and welcome back to the All Saints podcast. I'm here with a very special guest for you today. I'm talking to Pastor Virgil Hurt. Virgil, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Well, a number of folks here at All Saints will have heard of you and know of your ministry at the church where you serve. And there may be some people who aren't quite so aware of what it is that you've been doing and what it is you're going to be doing. I should explain that briefly first, then we'll get you to introduce yourself. Pastor Hurt has been a pastor in the CREC for many, many years. He's been presiding minister of his presbytery. He's been presiding minister of council twice. He was presiding minister during the COVID years, led us through those turbulent times. And the reason I want to get him on the podcast today is because he's going to be taking a significant role at the Reformed Evangelical Seminary in the coming years. We at All Saints are a sponsoring church of the seminary. We've got a number of students here who are at the seminary, and we're really excited about its work. And so I thought, let's get Virgil, grab him, bring him on here, and have him tell us not just about himself and his background and experience, which is considerable, but about what, by God's grace, the future may hold for the Reformed Evangelical Seminary as he steps into those roles. So, Virgil, thanks for joining us, and please tell us a bit about yourself first and your background, and then we'll segue to the church, and then from there to the seminary. Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, well, I've been pastor now for 25 years. I moved here to Lynchburg, Virginia from Moscow, Idaho, where I was serving as an elder and studying for ministry. And I moved here to plant a church in 2000 and have been here in the same church for that entire time. I married my childhood sweetheart, who I met in fifth grade. And so we've now been sweethearts for 50 years. We've been married for 38 years and counting. We have 6 married children. They're all in the Lord. They're in good churches. We have 15 grandchildren and 4 on the way. So we're really enjoying this side of life. And I'm very excited about the future of the CREC, both in what we're seeing as churches are growing. And a lot of our churches have been around for a while are now getting to be larger churches. In addition to that, we're seeing them plant churches and a lot of interest in new churches popping up all over the place. So, we'll talk a little bit about the seminary as we think about, your church and our church and some others that got together to get this seminary going. But there's a big need, a demand for new pastors, new leadership in the CREC. So that's part of what we need to develop in the future. And so, this is our joint venture to help train men, particularly for CREC future ministry.
Well, that's a subject to segue to, maybe via your own experience at Providence. Just tell us about the Providence Church in Let me try this again. My tongue untangled. Providence Church in Lynchburg, Virginia. That's right. And it's now one of the largest churches in the denomination, but that was not always so. Just tell us about its history, where it started, and what the Lord's been doing among you.
Yeah, well, when I moved here in 2000, it was Douglas Wilson is Gordon Wilson's brother. He was a professor at Liberty University. So it was him and me and one other family, and that was it. And we moved across the country. We didn't know anybody here. So we were starting quite literally from ground zero. Gordon knew several students who had a student Bible study. And those students were some of our first folks that came to our church. Several of those students are still in our church. They are our elders and deacons,
wow.
And now in their mid 40s. and so we are, I'm doing now weddings of people that I did their wedding, 25 years ago. I'm doing weddings of their children and baptizing their children. So that's really neat. So we just kind of had a slow growth through the years. I think that's typical of most churches in our world is you have a few visitors and every year you add a couple of families, 2 or 3 new families maybe, and over time you lose a few. And that was our process for about 20 years. And like many churches around COVID, especially right after, our response to COVID, the broader church's response to COVID, the negative response by the broader culture to COVID, I think put us in the forefront of leadership in that area. And that was recognized in, actually, it didn't bring up just issues with COVID response, that created all sorts of other issues that people had in their churches, sort of drifting either to the left or just not being very principled in some of their decisions. Regardless, we saw a large influx of people since 2020, and in the last couple of years, we've probably had 200 new people come to the church in the last couple of years. So that's been quite a change, and we're continuing to see lots of visitors, lots of new folks.
Right. It's interesting you mentioned those two things, that being principle driven, which from the pastoral standpoint means being biblically driven by theological principle. And then what I love about, I mean, you and I have had the chance to get to know each other. I've had a chance to admire you from afar, and you the church that you've been serving at, by God's grace, God has done wonderful things there. And to go from 3 families in a little front room house group to a church of hundreds of people, this is the kind of experience that is so valuable when we're trying to train men for pastoral ministry. Because
Right.
for every church that we have that's established and existing and needs additional staff members, there are many, many churches that don't yet exist, or that are very, very small, where we have the opportunity, if we can identify and train the right guys, to get them, equip them for those roles. And if they have the tenacity and resilience and commitment and faithfulness to stick with it for the long haul, as you've done, the Lord only knows what could be done in those kind of circumstances. It's really exciting to hear you talk about that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that longevity aspect of it is really important. In the part of our history of the CREC is planting some churches with some young guys. It was their first launch into ministry. And then in some ways, several of them really weren't prepared. I don't blame them necessarily, but they got into situations where they really weren't prepared for the ministry or prepared for the trouble. And then they wash out of the ministry. And these were really good men. And then we lose these men because we put them in situations that maybe they shouldn't have been in the first place. So I'm thinking about seminary training, but even as our churches get larger, we now have the ability to have associate pastors, having men train under experienced pastors in their own church, serving on their own elder board and deacon board in their local church. So then they experience all the trouble that's a church. There's a tremendous amount of good things that go on in our lives, in our community together, our worship. It's beautiful and good. But as you know, any pastor knows who has done this for very long, there's some really difficult things. There's some really yucky things that happen. And you have to persevere through that. It's part of, I just preached through 1 Peter 5. We were just talking about this, the Charlie Kirk situation and
Right.
the life of suffering. But there's joy on the other side of suffering. And that's what Jesus went to the cross for, the joy that he saw on the other side. And ministry is a lot like that. A lot of suffering, a lot of heartache, but you have to get through it to see the good on the other side of it. You believe it until you see it. But I think what we're doing along these lines as we think about the future of the CREC, hopefully, you're still going to have some train wrecks of situations, right, but hopefully we'll get guys launched on a better footing so that we can help them be successful in what they're doing as pastors, church planners, and new pastors in mission church situations.
Yeah. What you're saying reminds me of the first sermon that I preached at the church in London that I had the privilege of pastoring. We began with 6 families, and the first sermon I preached was on Psalm 126. And you remember the last verse: "He who goes out weeping, bearing the seed for sowing, shall come home with shouts of joy, bringing his sheaves with him." It's the one who goes out with weeping, with all the signs of the hard labor that is entailed in pastoral ministry and Christian life generally. That it's the cross-shaped pattern for church life as well as individual life is central to what we do.
Excuse me, sorry.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I just think in terms of, I've seen this in my own life. My wife and I have been married for a long time. We've had a wonderful, joyous life, but we've had some very, very deep sorrows and some very difficult things that we've made our way through. And the suffering it's like the joy is this inverse of the suffering. So the deeper the suffering, the deeper the sorrow, the greater the joy on the other side of it. Now, some people have really difficult lives and they just don't seem to get better. That's a hardship that some people have to suffer. But for most of us, we go through ups and downs. And when the downs are really low, the ups on the other side are truly glorious. And I think that's all just pointing us towards ultimate glory, glory of heaven, but even beyond heaven, the resurrection of the body and the victory of life over death. Those are all of the things that we are preaching and teaching in our churches, and we get to live it out before them. That's our calling as pastors.
You've spoken, Virgil, publicly about one particular aspect of unanticipated trial that you went through, and obviously your family as well, concerning your own health. I know we spoke about this just before we went live, and would you be willing just to share a little bit about that for us and what happened and
Sure.
how the Lord led you through those dark days?
Yeah, I'd be glad to. This was in 2018, so it's been a while. I was scheduled to go to the one state I've yet to go to, which is Alaska.
Right.
On Monday, I was going to go up there and go to Jack Phelps's church and go to their Presbyterian meeting and speak at a history conference. And on Friday afternoon, we had lunch with my daughter. Afterwards, I started feeling sort of not right. I've suddenly got the flu. Within an hour or so, it turned into severe pains. And I was actually sitting in my living room. My wife, who was my secretary at the time, she went down to our church office to get ready for our trip on Monday. I told her, I'm not feeling well. I need to go lay down. And I started feeling worse and worse. I Googled heart attack symptoms. My heart didn't hurt, but I had this severe pain in my shoulder. You've heard of that as a symptom. I Googled heart attack symptoms. I had 9 of the 10. And I'm like, uh-oh, I guess I'm having a heart attack. So I'm texting my wife, telling her, you better come back because I think I probably need to go to the hospital. I probably should have called 911, but I didn't. She made her way back. I collapsed about as soon as she got home. I collapsed, had a severe heart attack, 100% blockage, and had cardiac arrest. My heart actually stopped breathing. I was dead. Another name for cardiac arrest is cardiac death, because you're dead if your heart is not beating and you're not breathing. So I was dead for a time. My wife ran outside screaming, "Help me, Jesus." And my neighbor ran in, started doing compressions. And then when the EMTs got there, they shocked me, got me back going. That was a Friday. I went to the hospital. They put me in an induced coma. And I woke up on Sunday telling family stories and jokes from the past. I don't remember telling that, but there's video of it, so I know it's true. So I died on Friday and I rose on Sunday, which is, not a bad thing to happen for a preacher. My brother-in-law said Virgil will do anything for some sermon material. So I guess that's one of my big ones.
Sounds like the Lord has more work for you to do, Pastor.
Yes. Yeah. And I've had no real issues since then. So it was, it's a hereditary thing in my family, these heart issues, but I don't have any ongoing symptoms. And our days are numbered by the Lord. We have to trust that. Again, thinking back to Charlie Kirk, you think, what a tragedy. And it is. It's horrible. A horrible murder, heinous assassination. And yet, from the ultimate, absolute sovereignty of God, he lived his days. And we all have to do that. And he lived fearlessly. And we all have to learn that, because I think a lot of us protect our lives, hedge our bets. We're worried about tomorrow, and we have to do what God calls us to do today with courage and boldness. And that what happened to me helped me. It's getting more in the past, but it did help me to be courageous. And it helps me to appreciate every day I'm breathing, my heart's beating, the sun shining, really appreciate God's goodness. And that's part of what happens in those situations. You realize what's true all the time is not brought into focus all the time until we experience something like what happened to me, or even what happened to Charlie this last week. It puts perspective, reality that we all live in. Our days are numbered. We belong to God. We act accordingly every day.
Yeah. I was struck by, as I'm sure many of us were, by the words of Mrs. Kirk when she spoke after.
Yeah, that you have to watch that.
It's
You
just
cannot
unreal.
get through it without, weeping, but you have to watch it
Yeah.
if you haven't seen
And
it.
you think of all the things she could have said to say, the most important thing, if you're not in a church, go find yourself a church, a Bible believing church. Like that is the kind of thing that you can't manufacture. If that's not your conviction, then that's not what you're going to say. And she could have said anything at all, and people would have forgiven any kind of missteps that she might have made in the intense emotional heat of the moment. But there were no missteps at all. It was just this. You got a level-headed Christian lady who's a grieving widow who finds it within her to plead with her audience to
Yeah,
go and find a church that will open up the scriptures to them. Wow,
yeah,
what
yeah,
a thing to
phenomenal.
say.
Yeah,
Um, well, there's no segue from that to anything really, except perhaps to say that your point about the brevity of life and the frailty of life and the unpredictable character of life is one of those scriptural stimuli to grasp the moments that we have. And a time in your ministry, Virgil, where many men might be thinking, I've had a health scare. I've been doing this pastoring business for quite a while. Right now I'm thinking I might wind down and find something that's a little bit less demanding. You decided to take on the role as
right.
anything but winding down and less demanding. Tell us the plans that you have. As the board of the seminary, we've asked you to take up a particular role, but I'd love you to explain to our listeners what it's going to be.
Yes, well, I've actually had those thoughts, Steve. As you get older and you realize you put in a lot of work, sometimes you think, well, isn't it enough? I've earned my rest, but God has called us to work, and He's called us to work until we can't work. And our work isn't just for ourselves or just for our money; it's for His glory.
Right.
It's for the advance of the kingdom. It's for exalting the Lord Jesus, who's ruling and reigning over everything. So we answer to Him, and we have to when we want to take a break and say isn't enough, we have to realize who we're serving. He's not a hard taskmaster. He gives us good things to do, and it's good and glorious. So part of we have to also live in the moment and God's providence. What does He put right in front of us? I wasn't, the role you're asking, what is the role? I'm the president elect of RES, so I'll be stepping in after Roy Atwood retires next summer, July 1st, starting as the president of RES. Initially, I'll be doing this in conjunction with serving at my church, and we still have to work out all the details, what that means long term. But it does mean work. It means work until I can't. It means work to build the kingdom. And one of the key things that is important for me is taking the experience, the opportunities, the relationships, the people I know within the CREC to help build the long-term vision of the CREC. Of course, I see that as a subset of building the kingdom of God. We're just a little sliver of it. We're a part of it. I think we're an important part of it in America and in the kind of men that we have produced that, punch, way above their weight category. And so we have to take that seriously. This is what the Lord's put in front of us. And if I can be helpful and be a part of that, I want to continue to build that for the Lord. And so that's what I'll be doing, for the foreseeable future.
Great. So tell us then that there'll be some people here at All Saints and elsewhere who know about Reformed Evangelical Seminary. You can find it
Yeah.
online, revseminary.com. We're a sponsoring church here at All Saints. We've been involved right from the beginning. But there'll be some people who like, what's this seminary? What's it for? Who's it for?
Right.
So give us the elevator pitch, and then we'll just jump into some of the distinctives and some of the goals that we have for the institution and how we want to feed into the mission of the church in going forward.
Right. Well, certainly churchmen, people in the church are familiar with seminaries. That's the place where men go to get trained to be pastors. Historically, that's almost exclusively been they have to go to a place. They take, generally men studying for ministry are already finished with a bachelor's degree, so they might already be even a few years older than that, married, starting their families. and they go off to somewhere and study for ministry. It's very expensive. They have to be in this different location, so they're not in their local church. Oftentimes, they now become very disconnected from their local church. They may or may not have local church opportunities at that town where they're in seminary. The training is good, generally speaking. If it's a conservative, faithful seminary, some of them have drifted to the left. So people are familiar with that aspect. We really believe that it's a great benefit with what we're doing. It's online, so the men can study for the ministry, get the academic side, the bookish side from their teachers online that we are providing, but they get to stay in their hometown, in their own local church. They're under the authority and the supervision of their pastor, learning how to be a pastor while they're studying to be a pastor, either in their church or if they graduate and they have some other opportunity to go to a church plant or some other call in the CREC. This is a collaborative effort of several CREC churches. And we see it as primarily the need to actually train CREC pastors. There are going to be people in it who are not in the CREC. I imagine a lot of them are going to be coming our direction, but primarily we see this as getting a pipeline of CREC men to provide the demand that we have right now. There's more demand than supply for CREC ministers. Yeah. So we're trying to solve that issue.
Yeah, it's interesting. There are a number of initiatives that you've been involved in, or I've been involved in, where we've been trying to resource and support and initiate new CREC church plants. Initiating has not been the challenge, right? It's been finding. I could list 10 or 12 congregations across the country that either don't have a pastor and are looking for one, or have a pastor and are looking for another one. And the need is great. One of the challenges is in the midst of a frenetic time where we have some churches growing 10, 15, 25% per year, to look to the long term. And a seminary program is a significant investment of resources, of time, of building the infrastructure. And then for the men who get on it, it's 4, 5, 6 years part-time. But to think ahead so that we can provide these guys for the future, because if we don't now, then in 10 years' time or 5 years' time, we're really going to have a problem, because we will not have anything like enough pastors for our churches. And for good or ill, our churches tend to go the way of their pastors. So we desperately need to do this.
Yes, and right now, I mean, the way the seminary is set up, these men are studying in their home place. Generally speaking, they're going to be men who are full-time working. They may be employed by their church if they're already doing some sort of ministry within their church, so maybe they could study at a faster pace. But because the way it's set up, it's about a 6-year program to get their MDiv, which means it's going to be a while before we're starting to kick out a regular number of men on the other end. But Lord willing, this is the start of our 3rd year, so Lord willing, in about 2 to 5 years, we'll have a good group of graduates that start to kick out every year. And so we'll have this steady pipeline of new men, and that's going to be a growing number of men as well. So, we might be a little bit behind the 8 ball here for a couple of years as we try to catch up, but hopefully soon we'll have 30 or 40 men in the pipeline that are regularly coming out and being ready to go to churches.
But I want to speak as well to commend the quality of the guys who I've taught. I've taught a couple of courses so far, and I have been very, very impressed with the academic caliber and the application to the work of the guys I've taught. And I think in a sense, it speaks to the fact that because we're not a full-time residential seminary, that opens opportunities for guys who are a little bit older, a little bit more mature, and who want to do it for the right reasons. So it's no longer, and this isn't to criticize other seminaries like the one that I went to, but it's no longer guys in their mid-20s who've done a degree and they're thinking, well, I kind of like to be a pastor, let me go and do another degree.
Right.
It's people who have been in the workplace for 10, 15, 20 years who have been identified by their local churches who have to accredit them. If the local church won't accredit them, we won't take them. And so the people who actually know them have said, we want to commend this guy, we want to support him, give him opportunities to serve, perhaps support him financially. And they are only going to be able to do it if they're highly efficient with their time, highly motivated. I was just meeting with one of our seminary students here who shall remain nameless, but the people here will be able to guess which of the, well, they'll know it's one of 3 or 4 people. And just, I'm wanting to just check with him, making sure, are you okay with the workload? And he's saying, yeah, it's a stretch, but I'm doing fine. And I listen to what he's doing, and he's being extremely productive, extremely efficient in his time. He was already a hard worker, wonderful family, and he's adding theological depth and texture and strength to his character and to his readiness as a future minister. It's really exciting to see, and it's interesting. I think that goes the next layer down to the kind of character of men that we're producing. It's these guys are not, as it seems to me at least, they're not in it because it's like, oh, theology is interesting. They're in it because they're willing to make significant sacrifices of time and money and effort in order to serve Christ more faithfully. There's no glamour in getting up at 6 a.m. on a Saturday to learn your Greek vocab. That's not glitzy.
Right.
It's just, and it's really impressive and really encouraging to see.
Yeah. You mentioned even something about the expense. That's something to think about. It's also our seminary it's much more affordable than if you were going to pick up your family and go somewhere. And because we're doing it in conjunction with the local churches, the churches often will be financially supporting these men in their churches. If the churches are partnering with the seminary, if they're giving substantially to the seminary, then the churches actually get a large discount for their students. So there's some real great benefits of things that we're doing in this particular seminary. Also, the church enrichment courses, which I know you've taught at least one of those. Those have been a huge hit. So we've done one on elders, we've done on deacons, you did one on death and dying. And for those classes, we've had as many as 100, 125 people across the CREC. So those don't have to be MDiv students or seminary students per se. We have many our elders and deacons. The class you did on death and dying, there was a whole bunch of ladies in our church who were very interested in that, because now we've got a bunch of people in our churches who are in their 30s and 40s or 50s, and their parents are getting old and starting to die off.
Right.
And so that class was very timely, extremely helpful, and we had a large number of people coming to that. So in addition to training ministers, we're giving good teaching to the folks in our churches. And so that's another great benefit.
Well, listen, Pastor Hurt, I know you have other commitments to get to, and I don't want to detain you all afternoon here, but I'd love to ask you just one more question about the seminary. And really what I'm thinking here about is the future if everything goes well. Suppose I frame it like this. You're going to be stepping into the role as president of the seminary, Lord willing, from next summer. What a glorious opportunity. What possibilities lie open. As you think about this and you're praying about it, what's your dream? If everything goes well, what do you hope that the Lord will do in and through the people who work at the seminary alongside you and the students? What's the goal towards which you and we can all be praying and working?
Well, it appears to me that this seminary is going to be the main training system that we're going to have for the CREC. There's other avenues for people to get training within the CREC, and we're happy for those. We're glad to support those other ministries as well. But we have some distinct advantages, particularly the place, and we're gathering around a large number of our faculty are all CREC trained, or ministers for the most part, and or elders within the CREC. So the people are getting training from our own men. And so my hope is to educate every single pastor within the CREC, every current pastor. This is my goal over the next year. I'm in a sort of a stepping stone position right now. I'm the development director for RES. a lot of what I'm doing there is going to be some similar things I'll be doing as president, building relationships, calling people. So I want every pastor in the CREC, and presumably through him also his board of elders, to know who we are, what we're doing, how can we benefit you, how can we help you grow your church, train your elders, train your future pastors, help you get good associates that be faithful to the Bible, that are good preachers, plant new churches, grow the CREC. It's a little bit frightening, actually, the way the CREC is growing. I think in another 10 years, we'll probably easily double in size. It could be triple. Who knows? We don't know the future. But there's a big need, and I believe we're going to be the primary source as far as training and providing those men. Now, we can't train them all, so there's going to probably be some still coming from the outside and other places, which is good. But if we train them from within, they're already enculturated into the CREC, and we know that the CREC has its own distinct culture. And we brought a guy in from the outside a couple of years ago. It's great; he's done a wonderful job, but it took him well over a year just to kind of get oriented to who we are, and that's great. We'll do more of that, but I think we're going to be down the road with a head start with men who we're raised up from within.
That's wonderful. Well, let me add a final message then to those pastors and elders of our churches. Guys, we exist to serve you. I'm on the board, and I can tell you, because I've read the documents, Constitution and other governing documents in detail, that the day that we stop serving faithfully member churches of the CREC is the day that we cease to exist. And therefore, that really does reflect our role and our goal within the denomination. So please reach out to Pastor Hurt. You all know him. Some of you know him very well in his role now as development director, in his role in the future as president. We want to help you guys. And if you're a member of a CREC church and this is the first you've heard of the Reformed Evangelical Seminary, it's possible that your pastor and elders don't know us as well as we would love them to know us. So please take the opportunity, send this link across your pastor's desk, podcast or YouTube, whatever it is. And I encourage him to get in touch with us and let us know how we can serve him. We're confident that the programs the Lord has blessed us with will be able to serve him and your whole church. And we just covet the opportunity to do so more of the time, more effectively. Pastor Virgil Hurt, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.
All right.
Yep, great to be here.
God bless.
Take care.
And bye for now.